Hey, you guys, I have a very fun, exciting, interesting episode with Richard Pryor's widow, Jennifer Lee Pryor, coming up. But first, I want to tell you guys about Vegas.com. Springtime is the best time to visit Vegas and get the best deals, and Vegas.com can hook you up with those deals. The thing about Vegas.com is it's different than other travel websites because everyone at Vegas.com lives in Vegas, works in Vegas, plays in Vegas, so they know how to get the best deals. They're real insiders. Vegas.com also has a proprietary drop watch tool, which gets you the lowest rates on hotels. So Dropwatch continues to monitor the price even after you book and notifies you of changes to ensure you get the best deal. And you get a best price guarantee even after you've paid. You can get great rates on not just hotels, but also headliner shows, tours, attractions, VIP bottle service at top clubs, for example. So go to Vegas.com right now, click on the microphone in the top right corner, and enter my code BESTFRIEND to receive an extra 10% off everything but air hotel packages. That's Vegas.com. Click on the microphone and get your bonus savings by using my secret code BESTFRIEND. Book today. All right, here's the episode.
Alison, Rosen is your new best friend. Alison, with her good times never end. Alison, Rosen, doing wavy pencil dance again. Alison's your new best friend.
Hey everyone. Hi. Hello. It is me, Alison Rosen. Welcome to another episode of Alison Rosen is Your New Best Friend. I'm very excited to be sitting here with Jennifer Lee Pryor, Richard Pryor's fourth and seventh wife, as your Chiron in Omit the Logic, which just came out on Blu-ray and DVD in early February. Hello.
Hi. It's
Welcome.
great to be here.
Thank you so much for coming all the way out here.
Love it. Happy to be here.
So much stuff that I want to talk about. Right before we turn the mics on, you were talking about an event you were at last night.
Yeah.
So let's get to that in a minute. But first, I just want to mention Omit the Logic. I watched it. It was almost Shakespearean. Like I felt it felt almost like I was punched in the gut by the end. But I mean, I loved it. It was riveting, but just so emotional, and it really captured just the pathos of his life and the vulnerability and the chaos. Is that, now you were executive producer and you're featured in it. Is that what you were going for?
Well, actually, what I wanted to say when you were describing all that is, can you imagine what it was like living with him?
I would like to know.
I think really in terms of what the intention was with this piece was the truth. And the good, the bad, the ugly. Let's not pretend that some of that darkness didn't happen.
Right.
It certainly was a big part of Richard's life, and trying to explain, I think, trying to reveal what happened to Richard, where he came from, why certain things happened to Richard, and how he acted out sometimes the way he did. There's a cause and effect. He grew up very hard, and his relatives as well, and you kind of can't take him out of context. You really have to contextualize his entire life, his family,
and for the I think the vast majority of people know, but for the listeners, let's say, who are young or who just don't know, he grew up in a brothel.
Whorehouse,
His whole family was involved, and his grandmother was the madam.
Yeah.
And she was kind of a villainous
woman, it's
right?
interesting. Yeah, she villainous.
Maybe that's not fair.
Well, it's fair in that, for lack of a better term, she really had an iron hand. Mm-hmm. But you have to. I liked her, even though she at one point sent a maid in with a 2x4 over my legs. Yes.
Whoa.
Another story. Oh yeah, quite a story.
But why?
Well, Richard and I had been up in the wee hours snorting cocaine, and Alison goes, "Mm-hmm."
No, tell me the juicy stuff.
Mm-hmm. like everybody does. Mm-hmm. And we're talking about the 70s, darling. Mm-hmm. And the light came, daylight broke, and the phone started ringing, and he said, "Mama," who was at the house at the time, "please don't bother us." And she kept calling the intercom. And he said, "Tell her, Jennifer." So it was kind of a setup. I said, Mama, don't bother us. She called back and said, Richard, there's a man out here with a stick. And he hung up. He said, what's that mean? There's a man out here with a stick. Okay, remember, grew up and it ran a brothel. So the next thing I know, this maid comes in with a 2x4, smashes it over my legs. One thigh goes here, pinning me down. Her hands went around my neck, and she was strangling me.
Whoa.
And Richard was watching. And I think finally Richard came to his senses and, threw her off me. Mm-hmm. And I was obviously very upset. And I had some words to the grandmother, and I was asked to leave the house. And so you didn't go against the grandmother, no matter what. In fact, she was right no matter what. But I realized, too, that that's how they meted out punishment in the whorehouse. It was recreated.
By beating you?
By beating women. If they were disrespectful or disobedient, however she may have viewed it or interpreted it, and she would rule. And I really understood it, Perhaps to my detriment, I understood a little.
When you
too
say
much.
you understand it, what do you mean?
I really could appreciate where everybody came from, and they were vastly interesting people. Everybody. I appreciated everybody. Everybody was a character. Everybody had a story. This is from another time. I mean, they grew up hard in the Midwest, in the 30s, 20s, 30s, 40s. And survival was not easy for any of them. And Richard witnessed all this. So what I had experienced just in that little capsule there was something that he witnessed on a daily basis. So, by the way, I came back in the house only by apologizing to the grandmother for how I had spoken to her.
And how did you feel about that?
Well, I did it because I wild horses weren't going to keep me away from my man.
Right.
I loved Richard, and I felt that I was his connection to love and to good things and to a way out of that mentality. And I think that's an explanation for some of the reasons why I stayed when I perhaps shouldn't have.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. I know you guys had very, on the surface, upbringings.
Yes.
But emotionally, were there similarities?
That's a great question because that's absolutely spot on. I grew up in upstate New York. My dad was a very successful attorney. My mother was from an interesting family. Her father was a New York State Supreme Court justice. I grew up in privilege, but my mother was also mentally ill, and I saw a lot of domestic violence, and I was used to a certain chaos. So the chaos that I experienced with Richard and saw in his family didn't really frighten me the way it might frighten somebody else with another kind of upbringing. I was, kind of not necessarily inured to it, but I was not shocked. Mm-hmm. Not shocked. It wasn't necessarily what I experienced, but it was certainly another level. But I have to tell you, too, part of me was fascinated by it because Richard took all of his pain and turned it into magic. I mean, he was so brilliant. He could take a story and get on stage that night, and it would be hilarious. Maybe it had to do with, a punch or two that I took, but he could make it good, and that was his survival mechanism. I think comedy just saved his life.
When you first started falling for him, and I would like to know what that was like, but was there a part of you that was like, I should not let myself do this because this is perhaps not this is too dangerous or any of that, really?
No part. I wish I could say there was a little voice somewhere that said, but no, the driver who picked me up, we were chatting and he sort of asked me the same thing. And it's interesting to remember the first day I met him, I was completely smitten. I saw a very vulnerable soul. Pardon me. I saw a person who was shattered and wounded on one hand, and I connected with that, because on the surface he perhaps looked as if he would have everything and did. But in fact, I knew that he needed to be loved, and so did I.
What were the circumstances? How did you meet?
I met him through a friend of mine, Lucy Saroyan, William Saroyan's daughter, and she was working for him at the time. And, oh my God, what a story this is. I had just gotten back from Texas. I was modeling, acting, whatever. And I needed a gig. And she said, well, I'm decorating Richard's house. I'm a creative consultant to Richard. And she was also dating him. No boundaries anywhere. And she said, come on out and you can help me. And so I literally met him August 22nd, 1977. And we have a Polaroid of that day that we met. And you can just see I'm just gaga already. I'm a bird who swallowed the canary. And but he, I worked for him and got to know him. And we'd have these long talks. He was shooting the NBC variety show at the time. And I'd be there early in the morning, meeting workmen and such. And these women would, come in every morning, different woman every morning. Mm-hmm. And I knew, the driver asked me, he said, were you shocked? I said, no. It was, also the 70s, okay? So everybody, was pretty sexual at the time. One-night stands were not unusual. And
they were enlightened, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And little did we know, right? And of course, it was pre-AIDS. It was pre all of that. So, it was not as dangerous, of course, as it did become eventually. But anyway, one day, it was my birthday, and he gave me a package of cocaine. Again, the 70s. Keep in mind, everybody. No judgment here, folks. And we were snorting the coke and in his bedroom playing a guitar, Lucy, Richard, and myself. And by the way, he could sing amazingly. And he was like Billie Holiday's brother. If she had a brother, it was just, he really had a very moving voice. And he was barring chords all over the place. And I'm like, this dude, who is he? And it got to be very late. And I said, well, I'll go in the guest room and sleep. And Lucy stayed in the bedroom with Richard. Well, the sun came up, and she's hovering over me saying, we've got to go. He pulled a gun on me. I said, well, I have to be here in, an hour. It's silly for me to go anywhere. Wild horses couldn't have dragged me away, truth be told. And Richard came in a little while later and asked me to stay on, I later found out. Can I just say it all?
Oh,
here?
yeah.
Okay. So I later found out that he pulled a gun on her because she wouldn't give him a blowjob.
So, at least he had his reasons.
Well, he did have
He wasn't
a reason.
irrational.
Hey, there was an explanation,
How did you find that out? That's what he told you or she told you?
He told me. She never spoke to me again. She died.
What happened?
She died of a heroin overdose about 10 years ago. Yeah. Yeah.
Were you ever afraid of him or
Yes.
often afraid of him?
Not often. When he never made idle threats, and I learned that, for instance, the fire. I was there right before he lit himself on fire. I had moved out by then, by the way, because the drugs had totally moved in.
Because he was now doing freebase, right?
Yeah, and that was just a whole other level. And it was his lover. The pipe had moved in. You couldn't even relate anymore. He wasn't there
there was
anymore.
no there.
Yeah,
with him,
he was, no non-compos mentis. So I moved out. I was scared then because that was just it was a psychosis.
Scared for him or scared for you?
Everybody. I thought there's danger here. I went out to try to talk him into getting some help, which was kind of stupid, but
Why? Why stupid?
Because he was in a drug psychosis. It was not safe to be around. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I had just stopped everything because I knew there was major trouble ahead. So I wasn't even drinking a beer. And one night, had I had a glass of wine or a snort of Coke, he had a pile of Coke on his desk like that.
Like a foot high.
Oh, and I went to sleep and I woke up and it was half gone. And
wow.
He came at me and I got away.
What did he do?
Oh, he wanted to kill me. He said, "You're going to die."
He came at you with his hands, or did he have a gun? Or?
He had both. But he came at me with his hands and he said, "My life is over and you're going to go with me." And I was sitting at the edge of the bed and I had a cross around my neck and I grabbed the cross. The sun was coming up. And I said a prayer. I said, "Dear God, give me the words to make this all okay." And I calmed him down. I saw at that moment that death and killings and murder can happen when people are afraid. And I saw that he was more afraid than I was. So I calmed him down and I said, "We're going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. We're going to have babies. We're going to, And he calmed down, gave me enough time, and I made it to the door. And then 15 minutes later, I came in and said, "Do you want something to eat?" There were a few episodes like that. Trust me. He pulled a gun on me one night, cocked the trigger, and said, "Get out, bitch." And I said, "No worries." I went, sat on the stoop, smoked a cigarette, came back in and said, "What was that all about?" He said, "I'm so glad you didn't make me kill you."
But that must have...
Traumatized me?
Well, that's not what I was going to say, but yes. What I was going to say is that must have felt very... Now, I'm speaking as someone who sort of... I feel like I understand... and have a lot of codependence in me, not to give you that label if you don't want it. But
I'll own it.
I totally get that. That must have felt very gratifying to have been able to talk him down like that and be the voice of reason. Right?
Well, I'm not so codependent that it was gratifying for the wrong reason. It was simply gratifying because I saved my life.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. Talking him down was just another added benefit,
Right.
It was, but basically, was just thinking survival at the time, right? I am codependent. I mean, there's no question about it. I ended up in Al-Anon, and Al-Anon really saved my life. To understand that dynamic and phenomenon. Where does that come from? I had my own demons I had to deal with, right? It wasn't, I was pointing the finger at Richard so much one day that I just had to finally turn that finger around and point it at myself and say, what the fuck am I doing? What, how, why, how, where, and you just have to start to kind of put the pieces back together. So yeah, I'll certainly own that title. But by the way, back to the fire, because I digressed and went into another story. That was another story that I told you just then. But the fire, he threatened me. He said, "I know what I'm going to do. I've made up my mind. I'm going to do it." And he said, "If you don't leave, you're going to get it too." And I'm like,
it's chilling. Very chilling.
And I knew he was not kidding. I left. I went to the kitchen. I talked to his Aunt Dee and a couple of family friends who hangers on at the time. The locusts had descended. And they sort of poo-pooed me. And, I was just kind of the crazy white girl and get out of the house, Jennifer. And
what were you saying to them? Were you saying to them?
I was saying he's going to hurt himself. He's going to hurt himself. He's just told me. And he's, "No, Jennifer, you're being, get out." And, these are old school people, They were not embracing anything other than the fact that they were living off Richard at the time and they were letting him do anything, including kill himself. So by the time I got back to my apartment in Beverly Hills, I called Jim Brown. I said, "Jim, he's going to do something."
Jim Brown was his
friend until he wasn't anymore.
Oh, right. Yes. I remember which one he was. Now.
Yeah. And Jim Brown's the ex-football player, former football player. And he said, "No, he's promised me he's going to go into rehab." And I said, "Whatever, Jim." And I called the house. By the time the second phone call I made was to the house, and he was on fire, running through the house. The auntie dropped the phone, and he was on fire. And the Rashawn story.
Right. I wanted to ask you about that because I know that there's sort of two different versions of what happened, and I thought it was interesting that the Rashawn story was but you allowed that in, Omit the Logic, even though you were producer on
I
that.
had issues with it.
Okay.
I will be frank with you. I do, and I remain to have issues with it because Richard didn't tell me he saw any monks burn up.
So yeah, remind the listeners what the Rosen story was.
Rosen said that Rosen was his bodyguard, that he came in and Richard had said that there was the monk burning himself on television on some news show. Yeah. And Richard said, oh, that's real commitment. He's not even flinching. And I said, well, when would that have happened? And then Richard from there, Rosen left the room and then it happened. I didn't see Rosen when I was there and I left. So did that happen between, I suppose it could have happened. I let it stay in because it could have happened. I can't say categorically that it didn't. I know what I know. And so between the time that I left the home and got back to Beverly Hills and made those 2 calls, that's probably at least half an hour. By the way, in those days, you could get back to Beverly Hills and Northridge.
I can't even imagine that.
I know it.
It's a different time.
I know, really different time. So it's kind of baffling, but I can't think that he made it out of whole cloth. So
I was really. What struck me about that whole story is just how much, and I don't know how I never realized it. Maybe I just didn't look into it enough. I never realized that it was a suicide attempt.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I just always thought he was doing drugs. It was some kind of accident. He ended up on fire. I never realized that it was...
Do you know why you have that?
Why?
Belief? Because Richard lied. And the first thing he told the public was that it was an accident, that the rum he was using to light the thing and the torch and it blew up. And when he went to correct that lie with the truth in his film, in interviews, it's a phenomenon about the first thing that the public hears, they believe. And you can't correct it after that. The cat's out of the bag, so to speak. Or the wrong cat got out of the bag.
Right.
The lie got out of the bag, as opposed to the truth. But that's why you have that perception, because that was the first story told, and it stuck. Lots of people to this day think, "Oh, yeah, that was an accident." No, it was suicide. It was a suicide attempt. He's said to me, it's the only way out. So he saw out of his psychosis, he couldn't put that drug down, and he refused to get help. So in his psychosis, the only alternative logically was suicide. Not a lot of choices.
You married him after that, though, right?
Thank you for pointing that out.
Just want to make sure that I have the timeline clear. Were you worried that
this poor audience is thinking this woman is out of her mind? Yes. No, the timeline is, you're absolutely right. June 9th, 1980 was the fire. And by the way, he ended up in the Sherman Oaks Burn Center, which is now in Northridge. It was West Hills. Sorry, got relocated. And as a matter of fact, a friend of mine is currently at Sherman Oaks Hospital, which is where the burn center used to be. And it's very strange when I go to visit her.
I bet.
It's like, wait a minute, deja vu like a motherfucker. This is and I would go see him, and he was mad at me. We'd had some fights, obviously, prior to the whole fire thing and me moving out. And he wouldn't see me in the hospital. And there was a wonderful black nurse who took me aside one day, and she said, Jennifer, it hurts me so to see you come here with nothing but love in your heart and want to see him, and he's refusing to. And I want to tell you that, and he was seeing everybody else, that the hospitals are a great place to punish people.
Oh, that's so interesting.
And please don't come again until he wants to see you, just for yourself. It really hurt. She was so sweet and so kind, and clearly empathetic to kind of try to dissuade me from inflicting this constant pain. But and I didn't come until the night before he got out, and he called me and asked me to come see him, and I did. And we did not get back together then. That was a couple months after. He'd been in the hospital a couple months. And then he got well. Well, I mean, he began to heal. And he started going back to Hawaii. We'd built a house in Hawaii. And he was going out with a lot of women. And I was getting tired of it. I mean, I was really hurting and heartbroken. And we had some sort of reunion in January. And anyway, that whole year was sort of, he was just acting out a lot. And the following summer, I told him I was going to go to Europe, and I just had it. I was done. And I went to see Jimmy Cliff at the Roxy one night and met a wonderful Venezuelan lover. And I was finally, going to be free, And Richard smelled it immediately. And, please come down to Hawaii, come see me. And I went down, and he said, I want to marry you. And nah. And he talked me into it. A friend of mine said, "Oh yeah, you really had to be talked into that." And so we were married a week later, and in Hana, in 1981, and didn't last long. We got back too soon. He came back. We came back to California, Los Angeles, and he was going to work on a new concert movie. And it was too soon. He was too fragile. He just
Was that what became Live on the Sunset Strip?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's a famous story about that with him walking off. I mean, he basically, he basically cracked up and said, "I don't know what I'm doing here." And I knew it. Oh, God, I could see it happening. And he went off with Robin that night. I called Robin. I said, "You got to find him. He's in trouble." So Robin Williams and went off. And then the next night he showed up, and he great. But Ray Stark had to do some reshoots, like a month or two later. We went on a honeymoon 6 months after we got married. And in fact, the driver, again, I'm going to reference, is from Belize. And I said, "Oh, we were in Belize." We chartered this boat, and it was really fun. Of course, it was coming on to the girls, to the stews.
Was it always like that? Were you always? I know you were like the head. Bitch.
I was the head bitch.
You referred to yourself that way, right? But were there always other women around?
I was A-list, yeah. Yeah, I mean there were always other women around, and I wasn't necessarily threatened by them, but it's just a little tedious, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I mean, hookers or drug dealers, or and again the codependency. Well, why'd I stay? I adored him. I believed that the good was outweighing the bad. And I believe that it would change, and codependents think that they can fix shit, That's what it's about. And, we can't. I mean, we can do what we can do. But, also there's an element, too, and I've had years and years of therapy, that by fixing someone else, or by thinking we're fixing someone else, we're fixing ourselves. Mm-hmm. And I do rescue work. So, I mean, I see that all the time with dogs, the abused, homeless animals. It's completely immediately rewarding mm-hmm. and the feeling it gives one. So it's not necessarily selfish, but it's a noble effort that also helps the person doing it. It really does. And, so there was an element of that, I'm gonna love Richard so much and save him from these demons, and by way of saving myself too.
So what happened when you guys broke up? When the first marriage broke up?
Oh God, we ended it on the honeymoon boat, and he went back. He had to go see Uncle Dickie, who was sick, and he left me on the boat. And I'm like, in St. Lucia, and I said, "This is not cool, Richard. It's our honeymoon." And Uncle Dickie, I mean, he can wait, and I finally got off the boat, and I flew back, and then we had sort of dueling divorce lawyers, and mm-hmm. And he went back to the boat because it was chartered for a certain amount of time with another girl. Yeah. So on my honeymoon boat. Yeah. Yeah, it was. And I moved shortly after that. I just moved back to New York. And I figured I got to figure this out. And
You wrote a book, right?
I did.
Tarnished
and I'm writing
Angel?
a second one now. Yeah, Tarnished Angel. Did you read it?
No, I don't. I couldn't get a copy in time.
Yeah.
Although now I'm like, I have got to go find that book.
Yeah.
But my sense, and tell me if this is right, is that it ended in a way that leaves people probably surprised that you ended up with Richard again, right?
Yeah. But why not?
Right.
Listening to these stories, you wouldn't think anything of it. Of course, she went back. Yeah, well, first of all, I never stopped loving Richard, period. And, he really was, I just adored him. I mean, I adored him and still do. So I went back to New York and I, as T.S. Eliot said, you leave this place, you go on a journey, you end up where you came from and know it for the first time. Mm-hmm. So I really had to kind of retrace my steps. And that's why I started writing, because I had to look at my family, how I grew up, how I can sort of figure it, how, retracing, following the cookie crumbs, as it were. And it was kind of clear. It got very clear to me after years of writing. It took a while. I was seeing Richard on and off too, and while I was living my life, having other relationships, and he got sick. And in 1989, he was in New York shooting See No Evil, Hear No Evil, and I worked on it with him. And I looked at him. I said, why are you walking like an old man? And he said, I've been diagnosed with MS. Mm. And he was still doing drugs, though. And I got out of Dodge. He was staying at the Plaza Atene, and I remember coming one day, and there was another woman's dog's dog food in the room, in the suite, and I said, I can't do this anymore, Richard. I really can't do it anymore. And I went home, I got drunk and passed out for 2 days, and woke up and finished my book, which was kind of terrific. I needed to finish it, and I kind of had an ending. Until I didn't, until I started all over again. Not all over again, but I came out in 92. I did an interview with him for Spin magazine, and then in 94, I visited him at the Helmsley Palace, and he was drinking water glasses full of vodka and taking pills, and there were all these people around, and one of his ex-wives was there and wanted me to go down to the jewelry shop in the hotel and get the white lady price for the diamond ring, and it was just really, it was just smarmy and scary, and I'm like, I don't really,
I didn't know there was a different white lady price.
Apparently there was, actually. I got it. So I started coming. I didn't like what I was seeing, and he said, "I need help. Would you consider coming back?" So I started coming back and forth to LA to visit him a few times.
What did he mean? Someone to help him, like physically, to take care of him, or did he mean help getting clean?
All aspects of his life were crumbling.
Okay.
The locusts had descended and were picking over what was left. I mean, there was first day I got there, I saw there was a gourmet chef. Richard wasn't eating. He was in the bedroom on IV, not eating. So these women, girlfriends and exes, were walking out with 3-tiered cakes, and how much is that cook making? And it was just chaos. It was just, and the business manager and the lawyers. So I eventually came back and I fired everybody, and but it was quite a scene of having to pick up the debris, really. Just kind of make sense of it all. It took a couple of years to just kind of clean up the mess. And, oh, God, I closed the Bank of Pryor, basically. So, people were not, what I saw was that we had to take care of Richard. And We lowered child support. I mean, I had my life threatened. I had to get restraining orders on some of the wives, on a couple of the women. It was a big job. Mm-hmm. I had to sue people who were selling Richard's intellectual property, and I basically had to learn quick, fast, and in a hurry how to do what I had taken, the task I'd taken on. And I mean, it involved business. It involved, I had to hire new business managers, new lawyers, sue certain people, lower child support because there were this money was just hemorrhaging, and the money had to be there to take care of him because he was very ill. And I'm very proud to say I ran into John Singleton last night, and we were talking about Richard, and I said, one of the things I'm most proud of in my life is having taken such good care of him, that he lived with love and dignity and great care the last 11 years of his life. And I'm very proud of that, as well as I'm proud of protecting and enhancing his legacy and making sure that he lives on. Hence the biopic.
Mm-hmm. Yes, which I've been wanting to ask you all about that. Where does it stand now, and who's doing what?
Well, it's
and
very positive. When I came back July of '94, pardon me, in '95, there were people who were approaching Richard and myself to do this, and this is really an example of something worthwhile taking forever. It's 20 years later, we're sitting here, and I can tell you, I'm happy to say that the events have conspired to deliver us to a perfect storm where all of the right elements, and Lee Daniels is directing, Mike Epps will play Richard, Kate Hudson's going to play me, she can do it, and Oprah so far is the grandmother. And Bill Condon had written the script, and Lee is doing a great polish on it. And I supplied Lee with some of Richard's diaries, which are pretty awesome, because Richard wrote a lot about his childhood. After the fire, Richard started writing these diaries. I'm going to publish them one day, but not now. But we've got to get the film out. And so we're going to start shooting in July.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Where is it going to be shot?
New York. 2 weeks out here and the rest in New York. Yeah. Mm. So it's really exciting. And, Lee is the one to do it. I mean, he's the one to do it. I mean, if you look at his body of work, look at Precious. And I mean, the baggage that Richard had and carried through his life, someone like Lee is the one to understand that and to really be able to wrestle that to the ground and get a handle on it creatively and, turn it into something that is accessible to, and that's a hard bill to fill, but I have great faith that Lee thanked me in front of everybody last night. It was so sweet.
Yeah. So what was the event last night?
It was to honor Lee. Uptown Magazine, mm-hmm. At Fig and Olive restaurant here in Hollywood, and it was. Oh, what's the fellow's name who played Martin Luther King? He spoke. He was also in Butler.
He's blanking.
Got that odd name. He's got that odd name. Anyway, he spoke beautifully, and everybody got up and gave props to Lee, and then Lee thanked some people and industry people and whatever, and then he said, "Oh, and there's someone else I need to thank here. Jennifer, stand up." And I'm like, "Oh," he said, "I thank you for trusting me." He said. Thank you. He said, my own addiction, that about and that I've struggled with. I said, and you're trusting me with Richard's story, and he's had his addiction. And there's a lot of identification there, as well as, again, all the baggage that Richard had, Mm-hmm. And so I'm really excited. I mean, I'm just, it's going to come to fruition.
Do you know what it's going to be called yet?
No. Yeah. No, we're just calling it the biopic right now. We'll get to titles, yeah.
So ideally, when will this be released?
Well, I know Harvey would like it to be released for Oscars, that's because Harvey's good at that shit, And so if we're looking at shooting in July, I mean, God willing, they can pull it out by then, yeah. Mm.
So I know that there was all this controversy about the biopic, and you had tweeted something. I'm going to get your tweet wrong, paraphrasing. whenever you want to do or start to do a project, all his kids come out to attack you.
Yeah. Well, right after Richard died, 3 months after Richard died, one of his daughters sued me. And she lost. She kept losing. It took 4 years of litigation, and they ate up a lot of their trust in the meantime. But
what was she suing you for?
Oh, basically the trust that Richard left the kids, I guess she didn't think was enough. Mm-hmm. She wanted more, and she
David Oyelowo.
Yes,
that's the name.
Yes,
Oyelowo,
with his lovely British accent.
Yes.
He told a great story about Lee, and he imitated Lee too, because Lee has terrible ADD, and he imitated him beautifully, he was very sweet and dear, telling the story, and very entertaining. But anyway, so I prevailed in all the lawsuits. It was, but
she was unhappy, or they were unhappy with the trust or the terms of it.
They basically wanted my job,
Right.
Yeah, they the intellectual property and
I
all
see.
And in fact, Courtney Love was there last night. Courtney said, "Have you had trouble with family estate litigation?" I said, "Oh hell yeah, girl, hell yeah," because she's going through shit, right? Mm-hmm. And my daughter got too much percentage, and she's 22, and she knows. Anyway, I said, "Do you need a litigator? Because mine is the bomb, And but no, I'm lawyered up. I got plenty of lawyers. But it's so interesting that it's just such a common story.
Right.
A celebrity dies, and there's intellectual property, and I was just citing all of them driving over here. I mean, everything from Bob Marley's to Marvin Gaye's to Sammy Davis Jr. to James Brown. You can go on. The list goes on. So we prevailed, obviously, and it is on my shoulders to carry this legacy and obviously develop it. And it's a big job, but I'm up to the task.
But what are the kids' qualms about the biopic?
Okay, so by the way, I enjoy a warm, cordial relationship with the two younger ones. Mm. Well, their qualms are they want to be part of it. But unfortunately, you have to talk to me,
and they don't want to.
And they don't want to make you do with me. So it's like, that's not going to happen.
If they did make peace with you, would you be amenable to that?
Well, I would be amenable to some degree of involvement, visiting the set. But I mean, that's all, you're not going to interfere with the creative. I mean, Lee is at the helm here.
Right.
But Richard Jr. surprised me because I had helped Richard Jr. In various ways with his life, including money, when this litigation was going on. And I thought I had a good relationship with him. And then all of a sudden he's talking smack about me in the press. And I'm like, I wish him well. I don't know where it came from. He and Nick Cannon all of a sudden got tight because Nick didn't get the part. Nick's really pissed off about it. But, listen. I have learned to take the high road because there's less traffic up there. And, otherwise, what are you going to do? I mean, I really don't hold animosity towards these kids. I kind of get it, Mm-hmm. They're all those mamas, and they were all angry, and they're going to, imbue their kids with that same kind of anger. But the truth is, I didn't have kids with Richard. It's probably this one smart thing I did with Richard. I don't mean that. I'm denigrating myself. But I chose not to because, number one, I wasn't sure if I'd be a good mother. And number two, I knew he wasn't a good father. He provided. He always provided for his kids. But, he's not sitting doing homework with his children. Mm-hmm. He's not, singing nursery rhymes. I mean...
Did he not want to be a father?
I think that fatherhood was foisted upon him. I think that there were certain mothers who saw a paycheck, as crass and cold as that may sound, heartless. I think it's true. I think we know that people have babies for the wrong reason. And I just didn't want to do it, And we had dogs. And there was no child support with dogs, which I'd like to remind him about.
Can you tell us more? I'm just curious about all will someone be playing Gene Wilder in the movie, and will other icons be represented?
Yes, certain people will be certainly represented. But I haven't read the script. I'm not going to read it until Lee wants me to read it. And he's very excited about it. He was recently in the Bahamas writing it. Harvey sent him down there and said, "You're too distracted by Empire," because he's, oh my God, he's the flavor of the month right now, isn't he? Empire is blowing up, and it's a phenomenon in itself. And he needed to go away and write. He's very excited. He said he's had a turning point. He, not only with the diaries, but a book by Scott Saul called Becoming Richard Pryor. Fabulous book, by the way, folks. Fabulous. I would say it's the only book I would recommend, besides my own. It's truthful. It's well researched. Painstakingly researched. And if you want to know Richard Pryor, read that book. See Omit the Logic, because Omit the Logic is going to give you a lot of wonderful background about Richard. The amazing thing about Richard is there's so much material. There's just, his life was big. Life is short, but it's wide. Richard fit everything into it. He absolutely, living with Richard 1 week was like 20 years of somebody living in Montana or, Iowa somewhere. It was a thrill a minute. It was fast paced. Keeping up with him was like amazing. And I loved it. I have to tell you, I loved the ride. I never felt so alive, even in the dark moments, even in the darkness. It was a creative period, in that the love was creative. And when it stopped being creative, meaning when the drugs took over and it stops being creative, it's time to move on, but at least take the hiatus that we did. But it was a really, as volatile as it was, and you're really alive. You're quite alive. All your senses are alive. The love, your hearts, everything's like that,
Does one of the marriages burn more brightly to you? Like it was one, what did you fix the things that you had done wrong the first time, the second time, or
what was completely
it like?
Different, right? It was agape. The love, the party's over. When I came back, the party's over. Richard wanted to go back to the Comedy Store, so we did. And it was, I remember Damon Wayans saying to me, "I don't want to go see him perform at the Comedy Store because it's so sad." And I said, "Fuck you, Damon. It's heroic and tragic. But if you miss the heroicism of that, you're missing Richard. He's the one who wanted to go back on stage. He'd teeter up there with his cane, and he'd have a martini in one hand, just about to spill it, and his cigarette in the other, and he'd tell stories and tell his, do his little routines. And it made him alive. And if he wanted to do that, who are you, Damon, to talk about how sad it is, He's still here, and he still wants to be a part of it. And he loved going to the Comedy Store. And we did that for a couple of years, actually, 95, 96, 97. And I filmed it. And so I've got great footage of him. It's, Richard's last stand-up sitting down. In fact, I think some of it, we used a piece of it or two in Omit the Logic. And, again, it's not his best work, of course not, but it's a, documentation of what I perceive as him being Richard. And I love him for that. I love his bravery.
One of the things that surprised me about Omit the Logic, or rather that I was just I really took note of, was how different the N-word is now than then. I think feelings around the word, the similar, and the discomfort with it, and what it means, but just that now it's you just say the N-word, you don't actually say the whole word, versus it was used on the cover of magazines, it was in his album title. But in Omit the Logic, white people's discomfort or not knowing whether they can say it or not is represented quite a bit. But it's just, I feel like now we've kind of taken that word and just pushed it into the shadows.
Don't you think it belongs there, though?
Oh, yes. Yes. But I'm just wondering, do you feel like, is it progress? Or race relations this is turning into such a lofty, grandiose question. I'm not trying to do that with the question.
I know where you're going.
I mean, I guess that, well, yes, that word and the hatred and the bigotry and all of that, belongs in the shadows, but not like belongs in the shadows and therefore we feel good about it, but it's given a chance to flourish in the dark. That's not, and that, I guess that's my concern, is that did we have a healthier sense? Like, was it healthier then, or do you think it's healthier now?
Oh, I think it's healthier now. I do. Even though we see what the Republicans are doing, to voters' rights,
Right.
and some horrible things that are happening. The Supreme Court, kicking the voting rights legislation from 64 to the curb, part of it. I think that there is a reawakening right now going on. There is a second movement happening, and it's very real and alive. And having lived with through that period as a young woman, young teenager, by the way. My mother took helmets to Selma. We put them on a plane, and my father was an attorney for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. The Freedom Singers lived in our home. So, I mean, we were, sort of dyed in the wool, bleeding heart liberals. And I can tell you that, yes, it's a better time, even though, of course, as I said, to be repetitive here, that we're going backwards. Regarding the N-word, I have a quick story about the N-word.
Yes.
And we were in Hawaii. This is it's the first time I was down there with Richard, and I'm of course seeing that this place is so beautiful and in tranquil and elegant in its tranquility and nature, and how this man with such a jacket, as it were, furious jacket, was could be so appreciative of this kind of environment. Was, again, you're the man I love. This is beautiful. That he's talked to the cows in the pasture and interviewed the cows in the pasture. And so one night, however, Coke was still there, and his assistant was there, and Rashawn was there, and we were all sitting around doing Coke. And I actually have photos from this little session. And Richard said, I don't know if that story's in here, if we left it in there or not. I forget. And the word is flying, and this, and that, and that, flying amongst everybody. And so I tried it out. I thought, oh, I'm going to be, and then, and the Coke spoon stopped at the nostril, and everybody looked at me like, what the fuck did you say, white girl? And Richard took me by the hand, took me outside, and said, I have something to show you, Jennifer. And I thought, oh, damn, what's going to happen? He pointed to the stars, and he said, Jennifer, I want you to tell me which one is a N-word. I just said, audience. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry. He said, I know you didn't mean it. He said, but don't ever use that word again. And, it's true. Coming out of a white person's mouth, you just can't do it. And if African Americans, Black people want to say it, that's their choice. Some people say it takes the pain out of it.
Like to reappropriate it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, last night Mike Epps was on stage, and he said, he was starting to read some little package speech, and he just threw it away and said, "Hey," and these, and words, and kind of, because the room was full of Black people, and it sort of broke the ice, and everybody kind of appreciated he was trying to come from a real place. So it's very, very difficult, I think, but Richard really understood race, I think, in a conflicted yet profound way. And I think that in his work, he tore the covers off white people, yes, but he also tore the covers off Black people. And that is something that, first of all, Lee's doing in Empire, right? By talking about gays, Black gay men. I mean, that's not really talked about in the Black community too much. And that dialogue is happening. So, I think that, again, it makes me sad to see the backwards motion that's happening. But I also am happy to see that there is going to be a younger generation picking up the mantle and going forward with a new movement, a new civil rights movement, if you will.
Speaking of gays, and I hope it's okay that I'm asking you this, what is your understanding of what happened at the Hollywood Bowl?
Complicated. Very complicated. But God love him. Okay, so he saw... The story is that there are a couple of different stories going around about this, but from what my understanding is that he saw the Lockers, the dance troupe, being mistreated. And everybody else, all the white people were being taken care of and the black people weren't being taken care of, and he got angry about it. Also, contextually, Richard, that same week, quit his NBC variety show, married Deborah, and did this again in 1 week. 1 week, 15 years, someone in Iowa, and he had this event, and he basically told the gay community off. I mean, the sentence that to me is almost a salient point is, where were you? Where were you when Watts was burning? And now, whether that makes sense or not, he was calling attention to the fact that, hey, guys, wait a minute. We've got some real inequality going on here, and it needs to be looked at. Did he do it the right way? Who's to say? I mean, it was... And I had a lot of gay friends, and boy, my gay friends were like, "You're going out with him?" And, but yeah, I am going out with him. And so maybe it was clumsy, maybe it was painful and awkward and hurtful. But, and then he went on to say, "I suck dick." I mean, he really let it out. And, yeah, it's a complicated story.
What did he mean by that?
By sucking dick? Well, what do you think he meant by it? There's
Well,
a dick, and then he sucked it.
Right, but I mean...
let me imitate it for you. Here's a water bottle. Come here, Alison.
No, I mean, had he had homosexual experience? Is that...
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Now, does a homosexual experience make a gay man? Does a gay man make? No. And again, let's talk about the 70s. We all, I had my share of threesomes, and I don't like pussy, I mean, that's where I ended up about it, So, but everybody was experimenting, and so did Richard. And do I think Richard had gay tendencies? No. Do I think he was gay? No. Do I think he grew up in a place where sex was money? Sex was traded for monetary gain. He did, when he was young, have some sexual experiences for money. And
did his family put him up to that?
No, nobody put him up to it. But that would be really horrible. He just,
Right, it just was the thing you do.
I mean,
right.
you're living this life, He saw his mother in bed with, and he understood it, but you can't judge it. I mean, I don't judge it. I mean, I suppose people can because they do all the time, but do I judge it? No, I don't. I understand it. And, but it's amazing to kind of wrap your brain around it. It's a lot to wrap your brain around. Yeah. Yeah. Has this shocked you, Alison?
I know. I look more innocent than I am.
Well, you also look at me with puppy dog eyes sometimes, and I'm like, oh dear, is she shocked? I don't know.
No. It'd be just the whole...
Need a shot of whiskey and a hug after this, right?
I mean, just the whole pageant of every human emotion. It's just overwhelming.
Yeah.
It's both sad and triumphant. I'm trying not to have like a Damon Wayans, it's so sad thing. It's not pity. It's just...
It's heroic and tragic at the same time. This is really how I view it too. And it's kind of the whole sort of microcosm of life, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, I
And
have to,
so much of the ugliness of life that people, and I hope that doesn't sound judgmental because I don't mean it to. I just mean like the dark, tough shit that people want to turn away from.
Yeah.
It's so there. It's in your face
absolutely.
with his story.
And by the way, on that note, I'd like to address the whole Bill Cosby thing.
Yes.
Richard was dirty on the outside, but he was a good person. He was clean on the inside. Bill, the fuck. Clean. Oh, clean. He hated Richard because, Richard told, he worked dirty. Bill worked clean. So therefore, Bill's just a fucking hypocrite and, dirty on the inside.
Did you know?
It was a well-kept secret that Bill fucked everything that moved. This kind of shit that we're finding out about is, beyond. I mean, I wasn't aware of this kind of business. There are people in the business who were aware of it, and they're coming out now too. I think there are now 34 women, by the way, who have stepped forward.
Yeah, it's crazy high number.
It's some crazy. They came to our house one night for dinner, and
Bill and Camille
and Bill, and a couple weeks prior to this dinner. Richard and I had a threesome. I didn't want to do it. I said, Richard, you don't do it when you're in love with somebody. Trust me. You don't do it when you love someone. You only do it when you don't love anybody. It's recreational, And you did it with Warren Beatty, and you did it with, Roman Polanski, and you do it with me. And in a funny way, he was kind of unsophisticated, right? and I'd certainly been around the block, right? Mm-hmm. And so, okay, Richard, we'll do it. So there was some German lady in town, and he chose her, and she came out. And all of a sudden, in the middle of it, what happens when you're in love and you do a threesome? You get jealous. You get crazy. He got crazy. And he started smashing the house. And one of the things he smashed was this beautiful $10,000 Tiffany lamp that was hanging above the table that I'd purchased for him when I was working for him, decorating his house. And so fast forward to Bill and Camille coming a couple weeks later, and there we had not repaired the lamp yet. So it was this big gaping hole in the Tiffany lamp, right? And I had the housekeeper serve sand dabs that night. I was a nervous wreck. So Richard and I sitting there, it's like the most fucked up couple. There's a fucked up white girl and the goddamn crazy black man here. And here's the perfect couple. We're sitting right there for us to feel so ashamed. The perfect Camille, the perfect Bill, who are, by the way, not mentioning the big elephant in the room.
Right.
The smashed Tiffany lamp. It was just absurd. And I've never felt so judged and shamed in all my life. And I think about that.
Do you think that they were actively judging you?
Oh God, yes.
Yes.
Oh, honey.
Right. That was his thing, right?
I mean,
that
thing.
and
her thing too.
Really?
Oh.
Do you think she knew about what was going on?
I think she had to. First of all, there was a lawsuit, 10 years ago?
Yeah.
There was a lawsuit and a settlement. And he also, there's a story that a journalist told me about him stopping a National Enquirer story by throwing one of his kids under the bus.
I read about that.
Yeah. So, of course she knew.
Yeah.
Of course she knew. Why is she going for the okie doke, as Richard would say? That's anybody's guess. I'm not going to say, but I can guess why. Ka-ching. But he's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's done. I mean, Hannibal Burgess, who when he kind of outed him and really started talking about it, he pissed off the black community, and he pissed off black men by how he was talking down to them. And Ebonics and pull your pants up. And there's a famous speech called the Twinkie speech, where he basically said, well, you don't want your sons shot? What are they doing, stealing Twinkies? Oh, Bill, does that mean, therefore, these kids should be shot? I mean,
right.
Yeah. What kind of...
It's awful.
So, but this condescension that was going on and the holier than thou. And I think it got so over the top. It was almost bound to happen.
Right.
I mean,
he was protesting too much.
Oh, boy. So Hannibal, I mean, hats off to him. I know he's had some issues since then, but people pissed off at him. But, it's never cool to bring a black icon down, right? Mm-hmm. That's one of the big discussions surrounding this.
Right.
He's an icon. We don't have a lot of them. Leave him alone. That's kind of how it works. Hey, Martin Luther King had, skeletons in his closet.
Right.
It's okay.
But this, I mean, just the level of victimization is just,
Victimization, the perversion.
So, yeah.
You know. But I love it when Beverly Johnson came out with her story because she's black. They had been all white up until then. And when she came out with that, and she was drinking cappuccino, so she knew right away she was stoned. And she just told that motherfucker off. And he didn't even put her in a cab. I mean, she could have been killed, you know, just trying to get home. But, you know, yeah, he's a piece of shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you, I had heard tons of stories about him being a womanizer, but I had no idea
To the level and the depth of this perversity. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Some listeners tweeted me some questions for you.
Oh,
so
goody
just
gumdrops.
Here, real quick.
Is that girl on her way to therapy after she leaves you, Alison?
Let's see. Did he have jokes based on you or about you that you really loved, or ones that you really hated?
I loved every time he talked about me, even when it got my Irish up. But he called me white honky bitch. He told a story. It's at the end of... I worked with him on Live in Concert. That's his first concert movie. And he tells a story about... it's a sexual story.
Good.
Yeah. Oh, good.
I said good, yeah.
Well, and I was trying to make a comment, and the bitch got on top, and she came, and I'm not going to do justice to the routine. Google it, YouTube it, you can find it. But actually, I think it follows Macho Man. He got one time after we made love. He's like got out of bed and said, "Did I kill the pussy, girl? Did I kill?" I said, "Yeah, you killed the pussy. You're Macho Man. You've murdered the pussy. You're the pussy murderer." and he said, "I'm Macho Man. I'm Macho Man." And he started walking around the bedroom. "I'm Macho Man," and that turned into a whole routine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nathan Buckley says, who do you think he would find absolutely hilarious in this generation of stand-up comedy, like in the last 10 years?
Oh, gosh. I think he would like Hannibal, by the way. And I think he would like Kevin Hart. I think he'd appreciate Kevin's cool. And, people who are really doing their own thing and being very original. Mike's turning into a pretty good comic now, Mike Epps.
Was he selected by... Did he approach you, or did you approach him about doing the movie?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. I approached him a few years back about it, and then we had a falling out, and it had to do with him kind of getting involved too much with the kids. And so when Lee told me he was considering Mike, I said, "Oh, I will defer to you." There were 3 people in the running, really: Marlon Wayans and Nick and Mike. And he said, "Jen, Mike's the real deal." I said, "I know. I agree." I said, "But I can't give my blessing, but I'm not going to stand in your way." I have approvals, but I said, I'm not going to fuck with you. I'm not going to cock block you. You take it. You're going to be the director. He said, "No, I need your blessing." I said, "Well, I can't give you my blessing because he hasn't been cool with me, and he's got to come clean with me." And he said, "But he says he didn't do anything." I said, "Well, he's lying." I said, "I need him to come clean."
What had he done?
He was in bed with Rain and Elizabeth, and there was some shit. He'd given some money to Rain, and it was... He thought he was going to make a project with Rain based on her book, which was crazy anyway, because you can't make a movie about Richard Pryor without... Mm-hmm. So it was just an absurd thing. But I asked him to speak at Richard's funeral, and he got up there, and I could tell he was just kind of disconnected from me, and the kids were already kind of compiling a case against me, and had a lot of animosity, and I could tell he was sort of playing to them. And I'm like, anyway, I spotted it. And then Rain did a radio show where she actually said it. Well, now he wants a part in a movie, and he was on our side, and now he's on her. Yeah. So I said, "Look, again, Lee, just do your thing." But Mike called me one day, and he said, "Jen, I want to come clean." And I said, "Hey, I'll meet you down at, this little bistro near me." And he said, I got to tell you the truth. You're right. And I said, "I knew it." And and he said, "That's all you wanted was the truth?" I said, "That's all I wanted." And I said, "We're cool. We're going to move forward in a really great, productive, creative way. And we're good. We're good. It's the past." Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, Jay Thurston says, how would Richard have handled the internet, YouTube, and social media?
I don't think he would have had anything to do with it.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he would have maybe had his assistant do something with it, but he wouldn't be tweeting. He wouldn't be doing any of that shit. He wouldn't be, I think it's hurt some celebrities, by the way. I think it kind of drags them down to a level that you don't want to see them on, right?
Mm-hmm. And also, this is something that I talk about frequently. If you do get too wrapped up in Twitter and in reading instant responses, then that can mess with your head too.
I agree. It's like reading reviews, except you're reading the kind of instant, micro reviews. Ugh.
How did Richard feel about his reviews?
I really don't think he paid too much attention. He knew that the cookie cutter formulaic movies were for money. Mm-hmm. And he knew where his heart was, and his heart was in stand-up.
It wasn't in The Toy?
No.
Or Brewster's Millions?
No.
Superman 3?
No. Exactly. Those were all paychecks. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I was disappointed in Richard when he did some of that stuff, but, hey, who am I? It paid bills. He did a lot of that stuff for money, and he was high. Yes, he was high as a motherfucker when he did Stir Crazy. Mm-hmm. He's completely blitzed on Freebase that whole time.
I think I read that you can't even watch that, right?
I can't. No, I cannot. Yeah. I cannot. I went up to Tucson to visit him. We were apart at that time. Apart meaning I had moved out, and he was shooting, and there was some terrible but fascinating shit going on. I'm in his trailer one day, and the door opens, and these Hell's Angels come in the door, and serious Hell's Angels, and I got out, and he bought drugs for them. Well, the feds knew about it. It was right there in the open, I guess. And that night, I met Richard. Everybody else was staying at one of the Four Seasons in Tucson, and Richard had to have a house up in Coyote Country, where the coyotes and the gravel are, and it was scary. And that night, I woke up and I said, Richard, I smell something. I smell cigarette smoke. And I saw gravel was crunching outside and cigarette smoke. I said, Richard, somebody's outside. Somebody's outside. He said, it's okay. And he grabs a pump shotgun. And I'm like, oh, now I feel safer, Richard. Now I feel really safe. And I literally held on to him, spooning him all night. So, because the gun is here, Richard's here, and I'm here holding, so that the gun, of course, no sleep that night. The next day, the driver said, the feds are waiting for you on the set, Richard. And we got there, and Richard said, Jen, come with me. I said, what are you doing? He took me by the hand, sashayed up like do. Hi, officers, how can I help you? Richard, we know you scored dope from the Hells Angels. We're just going to tell you this once. If you try to leave town with that shit, you're going to get busted. They let him have it. That's all they said.
Right.
So we actually wrapped, I think, the next day, and we were going on the way to the airport, and Richard told the driver to go back to the house because I knew he had stash, right? And I said, Richard, I'm not going to the house with you. You're on your own. I got into a different car, went to the airport, got on the plane, and there's Gene Wilder. I'm sitting next to Gene, and Gene says, we have to talk about Richard. He's in trouble. And I'm like, I really don't want to talk about Richard. I know he's in trouble. Well, he had gone and gotten high, and he came on the plane just at the last minute. And, of course, he almost killed Gene for sitting next to me, talking smack, right? But, those kind of events, scary. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But he didn't get arrested, and he didn't try to leave with it. He just left high.
So he left with it in his system.
He did. In it, not on it.
Bill I Am says, did Richard know how much he was idolized by up-and-coming young comedians?
Yes. But did he feel it and appreciate it? Could he appreciate the love? And that's kind of part B, I think, of that question that I'll ask. I think that was hard for Richard to understand. He did know that people looked up to him and that people chased him, including Robin. Robin was not a great stand-up. Robin had a great film career, but, everybody was chasing Pryor. Eddie was chasing Pryor. Robin was, everybody was chasing Pryor. And he knew it. But, Richard had an incredible humility at the same time. He loved, you asked me about what comics would he love today. Richard loved to go to the Comedy Store, and he'd sit there and watch a shitty comic and love it and appreciate it because he loved the art of stand-up. Mm-hmm. He just loved that somebody could get up there and try, And he was very dear that way. And he encouraged a lot of comics, by the way.
What do you miss most about him?
Everything. Obviously not the bad stuff, but there are a few people with whom, I think the poet Donne said it, you look at a tree and you see the same shadow falling from that tree. And I could look at that tree, and Richard and I would see the same shadow. And I had a connection with him that I've never had with anybody else. And I just felt as if I were home with him. I'm very sad he's not on this planet. Mm-hmm. Even when he was sick, he'd sit in his wheelchair, and I could feel him. And he got to a point where speaking was very difficult, but he didn't need to. I could feel him, and I knew what he was feeling and thinking. And I just missed that connection. Richard saw me. And when someone sees you, that's an incredible thing. I had gone out with all kinds of guys and celebrities, and, I was a nice piece of ass everybody wanted. No, seriously. But who saw me? Who actually saw me? And Richard did. Richard said, "I see Jenny Lee." He used to say it. "I see Jenny Lee," and being seen is and known and felt and appreciated.
It's what love is.
It's what love is. Yeah, that is what love is. That's what deep love is. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You are going to make me cry.
Yeah. It's okay. It's all right. It's good to cry.
Do you want to love again?
I think I would like a companion, but it's a hard act to follow.
Yeah.
And not to say that it has to be, something necessarily has to compete with that, because there really isn't. It just, something would be different. But my life's very full, I have to say, with friendships and dogs and my dog rescue and work. Would I like to know somebody and have a companion? They'd have to put up with a lot, I think, They'd have to put up with 10 dogs, first of all. And you're not going to find your average person. But, I'm not actively seeking it, It's just whatever. Que sera, sera. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so there's a segment that we do on the show called Just Me or Everyone, where people write in with things that they think or do, and they wonder, is it just me or is it everyone? I would love to do it with you here. I know that we've gone over time-wise a little bit. How are you?
I'm okay.
You are? Okay, good. All right, there's a song.
Sometimes I ponder on something I have thought or done. Is it just me or everyone?
All right. Mal is your pal says, when I'm out walking my dog and see a note on someone's door, I always go read it. Same applies to notes on people's cars. I read notes on people's cars, as long as it's not like folded over or something. If it's a note on someone's door, I will be curious about it, but I won't actually, with my dog, go up to someone's door, because I feel like then I almost look like a stalker or something.
Agree. You're on someone's property.
Yes.
Yeah. But if the car is on the street, yeah. Yeah.
So you have that curiosity too.
I do.
Okay. Deborah Lindsay says, I open up all of my tasks for the day in separate tabs in the browser until they are completed. Is it just me or everyone? That's a smart thing to do. I don't do that,
I don't do that. That's very organized.
It really is.
So anal retentive.
I know. How organized must her house be?
Oh my God, it's flawless.
It's smart. No, I'll have like a billion different tabs on my computer open, and it'll be stressing me out, and I won't be able to find the thing I'm looking for. That's more how I do it.
Exactly.
And then accidentally I'll close like, the whole browser, and I'm like, oh no, there was something open.
Well, I'm old school. I keep a list.
That's like a to-do list?
Yeah, I have a
That's
to-do.
smart.
I have actually a couple of them on my desk, one for certain things and another for certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's good because it stares at me, right at me. I don't have to click. I just look at it. I sit down, I go, and then I check off. And I'm old school.
Are you a pretty organized person?
Yeah.
Have you always been that way? I'm always curious when I meet people who are organized because I could stand to be more organized and less of a clutter hog and all that.
I basically have been. I'm a Virgo, so people tell me I'm kind of a typical Virgo. But I remember reading an article in my early 20s, and it was about making lists and being organized. And it stuck in my head, and I'm like, that's the way to be productive. That's the way to get things done. And but I try. I always aspire to more organization myself, and sometimes I procrastinate in not a good way, but yeah.
Do you still live in the house that you and Richard lived in?
Oh no, that house was Northridge. Well, we lived in a couple different houses, but the house where a lot of this went down was in Northridge. That was that got demolished in the earthquake, and the owners rebuilt it. I revisited that house a few years ago because we thought we were going to shoot in it, and it was amazing to go back. When I got back home that day, I can remember putting my feet in my driveway going, oh shit, I was depressed for 2 weeks. I had such a traumatic feeling by literally going back on that property and, going through it. We bought Richard another house in 1994 when I came back. He was in a rental and all this money that was hemorrhaging again, as I told you. And so we bought him a house, a nice, modest house in Encino, fixed it up for his special needs, obviously wheelchair, etc. When he passed, I renovated it, and I live in that house. And I sleep in the room where he passed. And I feel great comfort there. Sometimes he wakes me up. That's real.
What happens?
My bed shakes, and my bed is huge, and it's heavy, and it's actually a bed that was custom made for him in Hawaii, and it shakes like, Jennifer. And I'm like, okay. And the first time it happened, I was like, oh shit. But I'm like, okay, it's okay. And I felt his brush, and one night I had a dream so real. I was dancing with him, and I felt him close to me. And who knows? But I do believe that there are visitations in dreams, and that he's visited me. Mm-hmm. Sometimes not enough. I ask him to visit me, but yeah. And I thought about moving, and I thought, I can't. This is, is so much of Richard here. I feel him.
Right.
That it would be hard for me. It's kind of a spooky thing to say, but
I don't think it is, though.
No?
I think that people who haven't been close to death might think that's spooky. Like the idea of someone wanting to spend time in the room where someone died. I think for people who haven't been near death, it's like, oh, why would you want to be near that? But when you have been near death, then you understand because you loved this person and you still feel a connection to them there, and it makes perfect sense.
I'm glad you see that. Have you been near death?
Yeah, I have. There's been actually there was someone when I was younger who was diagnosed with MS.
Oh wow.
And he took his own life. Which was so that was one of the deaths. But I kept thinking of him when I was watching Omit the Logic, and just I don't know, I don't think I'll ever really understand his decision process, but it was there's relapse remit MS, or there's progressive.
That's
and
right.
It was progressive, and he had there was that scene or a couple scenes of Richard holding the lighter to sort of mask the fact that his hand was curled up, and my friend had he was having a lot of problems with his hands. He couldn't type anymore, and he was a professor, and it's an awful one.
The woman who moved to Oregon, and
ended her life.
Yeah, my therapist makes reference to that as in a way that she respects it. She said, everyone is their own counsel at the end. Everyone holds their own counsel, and so you're quite right. And even though you have to process it and kind of wrestle with it, maybe wrap your brain around it, their choice to do this. She knew what she was facing.
Right.
And she made
brain cancer.
Yeah. I don't know if I could either, but it's an awesome decision to make. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yeah. Richard obviously knew what was coming, and he endured. And I think one of the reasons he endured, by the way, was because he felt he did fuck up in some ways. You know, he kept apologizing to me, by the way, the first few years and finally I said, no more apologies, no more. First of all, there was 2 people here, you know, and we can't make lemonade out of lemons when we're keep apologizing.
Yeah.
You know, we've kind of processed that and dealt with it. Now anyway, I digress. We're off your we're off your happy endings here.
No, that's really interesting. J-Mos and Bobo says, when at an ATM or alone in a parking lot and I see some unsavory characters hanging around, I fake a hacking cough to repel. That's smart. I don't do that.
I just don't go near the ATM.
Yeah. There was one time that I needed to go to an ATM, and it wasn't dark yet. It was kind of dusk, but I looked and I'm like, there's this guy just lurking there. And so I like left and, you know, I kept kind of like took my time. I had other errands to run. This guy, I don't want to go there because there's just this dude lurking there. And then I realized he had a security jacket on. Like, no wonder he was lurking. But I should have ended the story there. But I will say, if you're security, try not to look so sketchy.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
His body language
guards
is just,
are sketchy.
I guess so. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know, on that note too, I really believe that we're animals, and you see dogs react to some people and not others, and they know something that we don't sometimes. We have these same instincts inside of us, and so much of the time we repel those instincts or we resist them and don't listen to that voice that says there's danger. And we have to listen to that voice always.
I feel like that was like the first 2 years of my being in therapy was my therapist trying to get me to unlearn the
head.
To reconnect with what my gut was saying. Cause that's a
good therapist.
I came in and I was like, you know, I never wanted to make a judgment. And yet I was always, you know, it's like I would receive, or I was always falling for the wrong guy is essentially what I'm trying to say. But I would have this real open mind about it, you know, and it was like, she's trying to get me back in touch with, listen to what you know about a situation.
Yes.
Because I'm always the last to know what I know about a situation. I feel like.
That's very funny.
Because I'm getting better as I'm getting older. But anyway, okay. 4657 Jess says, I grind and or tap my teeth to whatever song gets stuck in my head. I do it without realizing it. Can't make it stop. No, I don't do that.
Oh, I don't do that. I wear a thing at night to prevent
you
grinding.
Do? My husband wears one of those.
Yeah.
And 4657 Jess also says, and it's another one about a song getting stuck in your head. When I get out of the car, the song that's in my head the rest of the day and memory picks up at the exact verse upon re-entry.
God, that's fascinating.
Yeah, the rest of the day. I don't know if I have that. I'm not so aware. It's usually like one verse or a few lines of a song will get stuck in my head, and then I'll just feel like I'm going nuts. Like,
yeah, the earworm. They
exactly.
Call it, right? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Tummy Towel says, while sitting on a toilet in a hotel, I imagine that there are people directly above me and below me doing the same thing. No, I don't, but I love that. Okay. We're all connected.
These are freaks.
These are my listeners. And I love them. Yes. We all enjoy the mundane aspects of life.
That's right.
Some of them are freaks. Golden Frank says, when hosting parties, I put out a bowl of dog treats in case someone feels the need to feed my pooch something. That's very nice.
That's nice. Yeah.
And then he says treats are better than cheese. Meaning it's better for someone to feed your dog a, pre-sanctioned treat than just a scrap.
Yeah, they always have to ask my permission, though. Yeah, don't you agree?
Yeah. I don't have. You know what? It's kind of new because I used to do this podcast in a studio, and so it's new that I've now moved the studio here. So now there's all these people coming in and out, but before there weren't a ton of, as you can probably tell from Wendy being somewhat afraid of people. Although. She was like that real early on, even. But anyway, my point being, it's kind of new that there's a lot of people coming in and out. So, but yes, I think people should ask first.
Yeah.
All right. And lastly, and this is a Twitter handle that I can't pronounce because it's 1F4046AOEA86496. I feel like that couldn't be more random.
Right.
Just me or everyone, have my phone in my hand, try to check the time and forget my phone has a clock and check my iPad or watch. I've done that. I felt like, oh no, I don't have my watch, even though I'm holding my phone.
Okay, here's one that I've done.
Okay.
I'm on the phone. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, I can't find it. Where's my phone?
I have done that too. I've done
Thank
that.
God. Okay.
I've done that. I can actually do you one worse or one better. I've been driving and I've thought, oh shit, where are my keys? Where are my car keys?
These things crack me up.
Yes.
I mean, there's nothing sillier than that, is there?
Well, gosh, this was so much fun.
It was.
Thank you so much.
I'm glad we ended up with some laughter, by the
Me
way.
too.
Because I know that this was maybe difficult. Some stuff that was maybe difficult to
but
digest,
real, but
real,
very
yeah.
real and very honest. Which
I'm
is
all
what
for that.
Yeah, me
and
too.
by the way, I'd like to end too by saying what Richard used to say: "What doesn't kill you makes you fat."
I love that. I love that. That's so sadly true. All right. If you guys are going to buy something on Amazon, click through the banner on my website, AlisonRosen.com. It doesn't cost you anything extra. It does help out the show. And thank you all so much for all of your Amazon support as we are getting Dining Room Studios up and running. It means a whole lot. Also, there's PayPal links on my website, on the right side of the website at AlisonRosen.com. Perhaps something you'd like to buy on Amazon is Richard Pryor's Omit the Logic.
Absolutely. Buy Omit the Logic. You'll love it, guys.
It's amazing. And it just came out on DVD and Blu-ray, so I definitely recommend that. And it's also probably streaming on Amazon too. Is it yet? I don't know if it is or not.
That's a question for
on iTunes. You
on
can get
iTunes.
It. Yeah.
Okay, there
so
you
you
go.
can get it all the places that you normally get things. We have a ringtone available.
Hey, go fuck yourself.
You can get that by searching Hey Go Fuck Yourself on your iPhone in the iTunes store. We also have 2 special bonus episodes available, recorded live at the LA Podcast Festival. First one with Doug Benson and Greg Proops. The next one with Doug Benson, musician Matt Costa, and much of the departed Thursday Gang. And those are $1.99 in the comedy album section of the iTunes store. You can follow me on Twitter at Alison Rosen. Follow the show's Twitter feed at ARIYNBF. Email us, ARIYNBFshow@gmail.com. Now, where should everyone go for you? And now plug everything that you want to tell people to make sure that to check
my
out.
goodness. Okay, you can go. Well, I'm on Twitter, Jennifer L. Pryor. I'm on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram, and because I'm still Crackberry. And I really, really want to encourage people to buy Omit the Logic, and I also want to encourage people to read Becoming Richard Pryor if you love Richard Pryor. These are also great tools to not only be entertained by, but just kind of get to know the man if you want to get to know the man. And stay tuned for the biopic.
Thank you so much. And
Yeah.
thank you guys so much for listening. I love you. Goodbye.
Nice.
Hey, do you know about the Alison Rosen Show?